Hello everyone. So it's been a while since I've done a video like this, but today I'm going to go through all of the banners currently out on JP that we don't have yet on global. So there are 11 banners between the Roman banner and what we have now on JP. So there are a lot of units coming up very soon, and I know a lot of you just want to know, like, what should you be saving your gems for, right? Like, what's upcoming so you can plan your sort of gem economy, what should you use tickets on, what you should save for, and I'm going to go through all those. So one thing that's very important before we talk about this, first of all, this is not going to be a character tier list video. I will do that in a separate video, hopefully next week, we'll see. It's a lot of work. And then also, there's something very important that kind of changes the conversation a little bit around how you should spend gems and whatever, and that is the update to the permanent pool of characters that happens with the Rose Valeria banner. That is this banner for chapter 9. So starting with this banner, limited units start entering the permanent pool, and I will show you what that means. So if I go to the current banner, the Onsen banner, and look at the units in the banner, so of course we have, you know, Klaudia at 1% pickup rate, that's pretty normal. However, you can see here, for under the 3-star characters, you can actually get a lot of limited characters, right? So everything up to Totori and Rorona from the Arland banner. So we have Valentine's, we have chapter 8, we have Shallies, we have chapter 7, you know, everything before then, all the way down to Sophie. So all of the limited units start entering the pool one by one. Now with the Rose Valeria banner, that will go up to Christmas, so you'll be able to get everything up to Resna and Patty from Sophie to them, and then every single banner a new character gets added. So with the Rose Heidi banner, it adds Mari. Roman and Escha get added with the Rose Flocke banner, and so on and so forth. And this will just continue happening every single banner. So the next banner we're going to get is going to have Rose Valeria in it as well. And once this happens, starting with the Rose Valeria banner, the value of tickets goes up drastically, right? Because now that you have a chance to get these limited characters you're missing from tickets, tickets become much more worth it. And I already think tickets are worth it if there are good characters in the pool. So after this, tickets are absolutely worth it. I don't think there's any excuse to not use tickets on most banners once this update happens. Like, my account has gotten, you know, since this update, I've gotten, let's just see which characters I've gotten. I've gotten Lily, I've gotten Klaudia, I have gotten Sue, and Izana. Izana was a really big one for me. I got a dupe Patty. I've gotten Logy. So yeah, there is a lot of value from just getting more pulls once this update happens, and basically you will always be using tickets for every single banner once this happens. In my opinion, you should be. So yeah, very important. And it does sort of change like what you should be thinking to spend on the banners before then, quite significantly, and I will cover that a little bit as well. So for the first banner coming up, the next banner after the current one on global, we should be getting the Shallie banner. So we have Shallies and Charlotte. If you haven't played, you know, Atelier Shallie, Alchemist of Dusk, very cute characters. They are dual protagonists, and they're coming together along with Lot's mother, who will be a welfare unit. I won't go over her too much, but this banner overall, for one, you know, we don't have the pool update yet, so you still can't get any limited characters, and these characters are kind of mediocre. I would probably put Shallies as like a C tier character and Shalla as a B tier character. Shallies is a support with area healing. She's fire. She probably helps okay in Fire Tower. I don't know, you can clear it without her. But basically, as a support, she's mostly focused around reducing damage dealt to your party, and it's just not a very needed role. I actually do like her character design, I like her kit, but she is just not particularly powerful. And then Charlotte is a very decent breaker that adds a bunch of damage, so we can just go go look at her kit real quick. This one. And where is she at? So see, she is yet another strike breaker, strike area breaker, which is pretty funny. And like she has a really weird kit where if she is attacking a target and breaks, she gets extra damage herself. And when breaking, she makes the enemy, with her burst, she makes all the enemies take 60% extra damage. So like her burst is pretty good for min-maxing damage until you get better characters later, but overall she's not quite good enough to be really considered in any like serious teams nowadays. And like she doesn't get an actual stun damage gift, so Lot's pretty mediocre. Definitely a very B tier character overall. So yeah, I wouldn't really even recommend tickets on this banner unless you like the characters. They are both very cute, especially I think Sarah's super cute in this outfit. But overall, just very mediocre banner. Basically a skip, right? So yeah. And then after that, we have the Chapter 8 banner with Breaker Logy+Juna, a new Resleria character. So she appears in Chapter 8. She is a stab attacker. Logy is a bolt defender. Now Logy, I would consider an A tier character, maybe S tier on certain teams like Izana. Basically, he's a breaker that when he breaks something, he gives your magic attackers guaranteed crit on their next attack. For most Izana team comps, he is just a straight upgrade over Bolt Resna. Generally, he feels very nice to use with Izana. However, a lot of other teams don't really need the utility he gives with the guaranteed crit. Like Academy Resna doesn't need it, Christmas Resna doesn't need it, New Year's Mari doesn't need it, and these are a lot of the like high tier attacker comps. And so basically, like depending on what team you want to use really determines how strong he is. He's very good with Izana though, and he's kind of like just not that great everywhere else if you don't need that crit chance. And then Yuna is kind of a B tier stab attacker, maybe even like C+, B-, not really sure, I haven't used her, but her kit's kind of weird because it's basically an execute based kit where she does more damage to enemies under 50% HP. And as you might be able to guess, that's pretty awkward. When the enemies are that low on damage, that's not when you need the damage boost, right? Because you're probably already able to pick them off pretty easily once they're low on HP. So getting a huge amount of boosted damage from low HP just isn't very good. She also has a gimmick on her burst where she can remove enemy damage reduction buffs, but it's really just a gimmick and it's not something that's particularly needed in the game. So Yuna is a fairly weak character while Logy is fairly strong. If you want to, you can use tickets on this banner. However, like I mentioned before, spending gems, you're not really getting that much, like you will get much better value out of your gems once the Rose banner comes and the permanent pool gets updated with new limited characters, right? So if you really want Logy, you can absolutely go for this banner, but I don't recommend it. Tickets at most, and even then, maybe not, right? Another thing about Logy, he also does have magical stun damage as a trait, and he does link to Shallies, I believe, so you can get triple magic stun for synthesis, which is very, very nice. So Logy is absolutely the good character of this banner, but because of the, like, once again, because of that perm pool update that comes with the Rose banner, I wouldn't go any further than tickets here, and you can still skip this banner, especially if you don't use Izana. Logy, in my opinion, is much weaker. So yeah, it just sort of depends on how you feel about it. But yeah, that's it for that banner. After that, we have the Valentine's Legend Fest. Now this is a solo unit banner with just Escha, so it's 1% for Escha, and solo banners with good units are generally more enticing than split banners with 2 units, because usually split banners, it's like one unit you want and one unit you don't want as much. So solo banners are pretty nice. However, Escha is kind of just an A tier unit at this point, I think. She's quite strong physical breaker. She's a stab breaker. She's quite strong. She is very debuff focused, so she does huge amounts of fizz damage taken onto enemies. You can get it up to like 110% increased fizz damage received on an enemy when you break them with her, which is really, really, really good. However, there are a couple things going against her, a few things. So currently in the meta of the game, in a lot of the recent content, stun HP has been inflating significantly. So breakers are losing a lot of value because it's becoming more and more difficult to stun enemies. This is kind of like a meta problem with breakers that's been going on for a while, and we don't really know how the devs are going to address this in the future, whether they'll start lowering stun HP or start increasing it even more. Nowadays on JP, I run teams with 0 breakers very frequently for hard content. It's just something that I do because breaking, like, we do enough damage to kill enemies without stunning them, and stunning is very difficult. And not only that, she is focused on increasing the physical damage that enemies receive, not magic damage, specifically physical. And the meta is very, very focused towards magic characters. Out of the top 5 attackers, only one of them is physical, out of my personal top 5 attackers, and that would be Valeria, and she's kind of near the bottom of that list. So yeah, the meta isn't very fizz oriented these days. If you do, there's also Logy as well. Logy's a very strong attacker as well. And so Escha's good there, but Logy is more area oriented and Escha is very single target oriented. It's still very decent. But yeah, the only attackers that are like particularly good and are really benefiting from her are Logy and Valeria, and there are stronger teams. So while she is a very, very good character in her own right, she absolutely trivializes Stab Tower, and she's probably worth using tickets on. I probably wouldn't put gems into her based on what's coming in the future. So she's still very good. If you get her, you're happy, but not really worth spending on. Once again, no update to the gacha pool, so we're not getting limited characters on this banner. All right, and next we have the Arland banner with the very, very cute winter-themed outfits for Rorona and Totori. So Totori is a unit I've talked about before. She is the unit that I currently recommend saving your spark for. Just personally, I sparked her on JP. I used my medals to get her, and I have not regretted it. She is very, very good for a couple of reasons. She is a defender that has a little bit of like passive area healing and solid ramping damage reduction like Patty. Her ramping damage reduction is a little bit weaker than Patty's, but it's still very strong. It still can get up to 20 or even 40% damage reduction in combat, along with a little bit of AoE healing for your party to, you know, support topping everyone off, along with another healer like Lydie. And then on top of that, on top of all of that, she gives a 24% magic skill damage buff to your entire party. And if you gear her up with the damage buff trait, that goes to 60%. So she gives 60% skill damage as a defender with taunt that also has good damage reduction and good healing. Yes, Totori is absolutely broken. She is so strong. She is very, very, very good. And I use her on basically every single team because most of the good attackers are magic. New Year's Mari, I use Totori. You know, Academy+Resna, I use Totori. Izana, I use Totori. She's really, really strong. And if that wasn't enough, she has a skill power synthesis gift. She gives skill power. She links to Riven, she links to Christmas+Resna, and she has right side purple, which in the future will allow you to link to really strong purple mats, materials that give things like crit damage or skill power and crit damage. The current meta synthesis combo for attackers on JP is Riven, Totori, Academy Uni, which is skill power, skill power, skill power, crit damage for your 4 traits. And Totori is required for this. She is incredibly useful, not only just in synthesis, but also in combat. And she is one of the most important units to have, in my opinion. If not the most important unit to have. And so if you're a free-to-play player that's, you know, not sure what you should spend your medals on, which free-to-play is getting to about 150 medals at this point, Totori. Absolutely Totori. like without a doubt in my mind, Totori. She is the single most useful character. She's versatile. She fits into every comp. She fits into every synthesis. I cannot say enough good things about Totori. Meanwhile, she's a support that gives crit chance. She's kind of whatever. But anyways, Totori. Now, should you spend gems on this banner? In my opinion, no. Despite all I'm saying about Totori, you should just assume that you're either getting her from tickets or daily rules, or that you're using your medals to spark her. I don't think it's worth spending gems over spending medals for this banner. And the reason why is, once again, the pool has not updated yet when this banner comes. So you can't get characters like Sophie or Lydie or Ryza or Izana from rolling this banner, right? Or Patty, right? Like, you can't get those characters rolling this banner because it hasn't updated yet. So yeah, I wouldn't spend gems. But very, very, very good banner. Probably at least worth spending tickets on to see if you get lucky, because Totori is really that good. And if you can avoid spending the medals, like, obviously you would rather just get the character than spend the medals, right? So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about this one. And next, we finally have the start of the Rose banners for the half-year anniversary of the game. And this is where the pool updates. This is where you can start really going all in on gems and tickets and stuff, in my opinion, because that update really is a big deal. Because if there's gaps in your collection, like Lydie, like Ryza, like Izana, you know, Patty, Christmas+Resna, all of these really strong characters, being able to get them while just randomly rolling for banner units is a huge deal. And this banner is also quite good in its own right. So first we have Valeria, a strike attacker. Very, 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 very cool. I love Valeria. Help. Valeria is awesome. I haven't used her personally. I don't have her. She is one of the top tier attackers. However, she is a single target focused attacker. Nowadays on JP, the meta is mostly area focused because we have so much damage scaling. You just sort of wipe boards with area attacks. However, there is still a place for single target attackers in the game. They're still quite strong. The good ones can absolutely carry you through pretty much all content. And if enemy HP starts inflating very soon, area attackers will start falling off a bit, and really strong single target attackers like Valeria will take over. However, she is a ramp-based character. She does need a few turns to get going, which weakens her in my opinion. However, she does ramp faster than most other ramp-based characters, getting a ton of crit damage very, very quickly after just killing a couple enemies in like a burst. And she's quite good, and she caps out at doing tons of damage. People have hit damage cap with her before, which is 9.999 million damage, so that was of course in item battles, so it's a little bit cheating, but she is capable of doing that. She's very, very strong when ramped up. She ramps up quickly. She's a good character. I would probably put her in like A+ tier as an attacker personally, not quite S tier. I don't like going past S tier, so S tier is my highest tiering, which is where like New Year's Mari is, Izana and Academy Resna. I think those are the three I would put in S tier, but Valeria kind of competes with them, so she gets close to competing with them. She's very, very, very good. And then we also have Lydie. Lydie is a strike defender, and shortly after this update, we also get the ability to do multiple of the same character in one party. So Lydie is not competing with her other self. Otherwise, her value would be quite low if she still had to compete with her other self. But she is a solid defender in her own right once that update comes, where you can use both Lydies in the same party. And her actual like defender kit isn't super amazing in my opinion. It's okay. It's definitely focused on keeping one character safe from a single target, and she doesn't really have as much consistent personal damage reduction or any self-healing. And defenders kind of really need self-sustain a lot of the time to help keep them up. That's one of the reasons Patty is so strong. But to make up for this, she does give a skill damage buff to your entire party. And this is a generic skill damage buff, so unlike Totori, it will apply to everyone, not just magic. So quite good. Any character that gives like a 20% skill damage buff to your party as like their skill 2 or whatever is generally going to be decent. They won't be the best in their role necessarily, but they will be quite good. And so this is a very high quality banner. This one specifically, I would definitely also probably put Lydie in A tier, not quite S tier, but very, very, very strong. So yeah, both very high quality units, and you can't really go wrong with spending gems here because of the pool update. They're both good units. Now, whether or not you decide to spend gems here really depends on what you're looking for. It really depends on, you know, what other units you have, what kind of team you want to end up putting together. And if you want to wait a bit and put together like the most meta team, this banner is a skip. However, I don't necessarily recommend that for people who are free to play or not spending very much. And I'll go over that once I get to the Academy section. But yeah, overall, very solid banner. If you go all in on this banner, you probably won't regret it if you hit the units, so really solid banner. But it's also not necessarily the best choice, so you have to kind of decide for yourself. But tickets, absolutely worth it. And I think tickets are worth it on every banner from now on because of that pool update, and the unit quality is generally quite high. So at least tickets, for sure. All right, next banner. We have the second Rose banner with Heidi and Firis. So we have Firis, and Firis is SSS tier in cuteness. Unfortunately, that's about where the good things stop. She's probably like a B- tier character. She is a debuff supporter, and her debuffs are solid. It's like minus 35% all resistances for one attack on her skill 2. It's decent, but the fact that it only lasts for one turn means she doesn't play very nice with breakers. You can't really stack it. It's just very difficult to use her properly. Her debuff can still be quite powerful, but your team slots are very limited and very competitive at this point, and Firis just isn't really quite good enough to make an impact. Unfortunately, because I love her. She also doesn't have good gear. She doesn't have, and there's no way to scale her debuff with traits. So it really, like, those two factors really considerably lower her power. On the other side of the coin, we have Heidi. She is a strike breaker, and in my opinion, she is one of the S tier breakers. She's really, really, really good. And the reason for that is because of her burst. Heidi's burst is automatically break all targets when attacking weakness, if they are weak. So if you can make the enemies weak to strike, her burst will just hit everything and auto break them. It's very, very strong. Also, when she breaks an enemy, you get 30% item gauge refill, which is really good for double stacking items very quickly, just turbocharging your item generation. And her skill 2 is also a very strong single target break. It comes with strike, res debuff, and it makes the enemies take more damage. Overall, Heidi's just very solid. I value auto break quite highly. Even though hers is conditional, it's also AoE. Especially nowadays with enemy stun HP inflating significantly, it can be very hard to break things without things like auto break. It's one reason that I think Master Ryza still holds up so well. I don't use her that much anymore nowadays, but when I do use her, it's usually for her burst because of that auto break. So auto break is very strong. Heidi's a very strong character because of it. Firis is a bit weaker, but still quite a solid banner because Heidi is so good. All right, and next we have the final Rose banner with Flocke and Suelle. And I hope everyone's heard about Flocke by now. Flocke is, of course, very cute, very a much awaited character to join the cast, to be playable. I know there's a lot of Flocke fans out there, and they made her good. In my opinion, they made her boring as well, but she is very strong. So in the past, I have called Flocke a side grade to Lydie. That's kind of true still. I still sort of believe in that. As far as supporters go, she does go up there in the S tier along with Lydie. and other, you know, healing buff supporters, basically Lydie. So, and you can even use both of them in one team if you wanted to. There'd be nothing wrong with that. There are teams that absolutely can do that. But yeah, she is very similar to Lydie. However, there are a few key differences. Her skill 2 applies crit damage instead of skill damage. And so the crit damage, while quite good, is in a lot of cases going to be a bit less damage than skill damage. Because we actually have more sources of crit damage now on JP than we do skill damage, like 60% from the crit damage trait, and a significant amount from equipment, like a lot of weapons have 30% crit damage on them or more, and then of course Flocke as well. There are just a lot of sources of crit damage, so she'll often be about even or maybe a bit worse than Lydie in terms of damage from her skill 2. However, Flocke also gets a massive amount of healing. If an ally is at low HP, she gets 100% increased healing on her area healing. So she basically just doubled the healing of Lydie, which is really, really, really impactful. That healing is absolutely worth the damage maybe being a bit worse, but it's usually going to be about the same, probably. Like the damage buff is about equal. So yeah, Flocke's very, very good. And Flocke also gives a very strong attack buff on one of her passives, so she's more generic for damage in that regard than Lydie, whereas Lydie only gives a damage buff to bolt characters. So yeah, Flocke is quite strong, absolutely an S tier supporter. If you do have Lydie, you don't necessarily need to go for her. If you don't have Lydie, she is absolutely worth rolling for, because you do want one of these healing damage supporters, right? She does have the downside of the buff she gives being crit damage, so you do need to crit. However, there are a lot of ways to solve that. A lot of characters give themselves guaranteed crit on their own, and we also have an item nowadays on JP that came with Academy Part 2, or Part 3, I don't remember. It came with the Academy event, that will create crit panels under your characters and give them guaranteed crit for that attack. So there's a lot of ways to get crit nowadays. A lot of comps are trending towards one-shot combos. A lot of characters just crit by themselves already, such as like New Year's Mari. So it's not really too much of a downside that you have to work around. Crit damage is perfectly fine. So yeah, Flocke, very, very strong. And then we have Sue. Sue is a single target attacker. She's stab. She's probably around like B tier-ish. She is the only Rose unit I personally pulled. I haven't really used her much because she's not that strong. But her kit's kind of interesting. Her skill 2, it's like 340% damage rate or something, which isn't super high. However, it does give her a guaranteed dodge for the next attack that hits her, which can be pretty good for keeping your attacker alive without putting like area defense traits on them, right? So I think if they start making certain types of difficult content in the future, Sue could actually be a quite serious contender for being a strong attacker in that content, right? If we start getting really, really deadly content again. But it's hard to tell based on the current content we have. I wouldn't really consider her that strong, so. However, her burst does do good damage. She's a very decent attacker. She's not bad by any means, but she's not amazing either. So very solid B tier, I would say. All right, next we have the start of the Academy banners with Resna and Sophie. If you've watched my video on this banner, the first banner with Resna, I said she felt fairly mediocre in that video, but she could be very strong if she got good enough support later on in the event, because we didn't know it was coming, and that support absolutely came. Resna is an S tier attacker now on JP. I wouldn't have considered her S tier when she first came out, but with everything that came later, she's absolutely up there. She is very, very, very strong. She's an area attacker that scales very heavily with blue panels. If you build her right, with the right team comp, with the right combo, a single blue panel will give her something like, I don't know, 150% skill damage and like 40% crit damage. It's absolutely absurd. So she just gets massive, massive buffs from blue panels, and she does good area damage. She's very, very, very strong. And then we also have Sophie, the mighty boss. She is a stab supporter with a decent area heal, a bad burst that you would never use. Her area heal creates blue panels on your next like 4 or 5 ally turns. So she does synergize well with Resna, creating blue panels. But if you aren't using Resna, she is like honestly A tier, I would say. And she's only A tier because she's still good if you don't have Lydie or Flocke. If you do have Lydie or Flocke, I probably wouldn't use her at all. Like, she would be more like C tier comparatively. But because she is in an archetype that's strong inherently, you know, an area healer that gives damage to your units, she can still get A tier generally, right? If you don't have Lydie or Flocke, she's still good. And of course, Resna is S tier. However, there is one caveat to Academy Resna, and that is that without, you know, the full Academy combo, she kind of loses a fairly significant amount of her power. You can still make her quite good even without Sophie, even without Academy Ryza. And a lot of the min-max teams don't use Sophie. But without both of those characters, she's not quite as good. Like, if you want to use her as a really strong auto attacker, like you can often do with Izana. Izana's very good on auto at clearing things with her massive amounts of area damage. You kind of need Sophie. Because otherwise you're not going to be able to have blue panels on her consistently, right? So if you want to use her on auto, Sophie's required, more or less, because that's the only way to consistently create blue panels under her, right? If you are fine playing manually, we do have an item as well that can create blue panels. It'll create 4 blue panels under the next 4 turns. So you can absolutely consistently get those blue panels. And that'll work fine for auto like score battles and stuff. It won't work well for auto dungeons. If you want to auto dungeons with her, you do need Sophie, like basically required in my opinion. And without the full setup, she's probably fairly similar to Izana power-wise. So not necessarily super worth going for if you can't afford to get all of the characters, right? Because the Academy characters are very combo-y. Like, you know, Resna gets a ton of damage for blue panels, Sophie creates those blue panels, and with the next banner, we have Ryza. She strengthens those blue panels. She is a windbreaker that strengthens blue panels. And that is sort of the Academy combo, those 3 characters. We have Gura, Ryza, Resna, Sophie. If you want to know more about this combo, I will post a link to a video from another creator in the description that goes into the combo more in depth. I don't have all of these characters. I only have Resna personally, so I can't really show off the combo very well. But basically, when it comes down to it, Resna by herself is fine. And the reason why I'm like sort of going on so long talking about this is because, you know, if you're not spending money, or you're not spending very much money, it can be very difficult to like go after these units when they require other units to be really good, right? So like you need Resna and Ryza at a minimum, you need Sophie. You can absolutely save your spark medals for one of them, your legend medals. I still recommend using them on Totori instead, but you can absolutely save them. And like if you go all in on this banner, get both the characters, and you can just commit to sparking like Ryza after you have the full combo. It's super good. But, you know, you can't really guarantee that you're getting these characters unless you're willing to spend money, right? So while these characters do make the strongest team in the game at the moment, as a free player or a lower spend player, you're not going to be able to like reliably get all of them to put together the combo. And so I might just, you know, stop at tickets on these banners, basically, right? You know, stop at tickets, do the daily pulls, see what happens. If you do get 1 or 2 of the characters, maybe consider going all in. If you don't, then just call it, right? Like, if you don't get lucky, you are not going to be getting these characters without spending money. And they're just not really worth it if you don't have the entire set. So yeah, a little bit weird there between these two banners, but that's just kind of how it is. And like I said before, I will link a video about the combo in the description, so be sure to check that out. It's from a very, very good player, Whimsical, and yeah, you can support his channel as well. And then along with Ryza on the second Academy banner, we have Mimi. Mimi is a defender. She's like B- tier. There's not really much to talk about. She's like a weird niche of a defender that wants to do damage, but she doesn't have great self-healing. She doesn't have great damage reduction. She basically just has taunt, and she's not very strong. Unfortunately, because I love her. She's super cute. Mimi's great. But yeah, this banner overall, I would just put tickets in, like I said before. If you do get these two characters, Sophie and Resna, then absolutely, maybe if you have gems left, throw them in trying to get Ryza, or just commit to sparking Ryza. It's really up to you. But Academy is definitely, it's a difficult ask to commit gems for Academy. If you really want to go for this team, start saving now, basically. That's all there is to it. And then the third Academy banner, we have Eren and Rorona. So Eren is kind of like a speedy wind attacker. She's very similar to Princess Meru in her kit. However, it's a bit stronger. It ramps up damage much faster, much better, higher base values on her damage. But other than that, it's very similar. Low wait time, high speed from the burst with very low wait time. I haven't used her much, or at all. I don't have her. However, rampy characters that don't do very much damage, just generally, like rampy fast characters, like they don't get enough turns for it to super be worth the less damage that you get, right? Like her damage will still be very decent if you ramp her up. She can actually be competitive damage-wise, but you still do have to ramp. Compared to characters like New Year's Mari, they get fewer turns, but she's going to be one-shotting something every single turn. I just don't see her being like amazing, so probably like B tier, and Rorona as well is kind of like B tier. Rorona is a bit of a special character as a strike supporter that creates burst panels. And while that might sound very good, there are a few things holding her back. One thing is that the skill does have a wait time of 275 as expected for such a powerful skill, which makes manipulating that timeline awkward. She will always be going last. So to create those burst panels, yeah, you're going to have, it's going to be starting on the second round, right? Which can still be very nice in a lot of situations. She's very good compared with, say, like Valeria. And maybe even with Valeria, her value raises a decent amount. She can be very strong with auto break bursts, such as Heidi and Master Ryza. Like, she definitely has use cases. However, a lot of the strong teams and a lot of the strong combos nowadays are very skill 2 focused. You know, you set up your combo and you do like 4 million damage with the skill 2 from Academy Resna. You don't need that burst, right? You just don't need it. So depending on content, depending on characters in the future, her rating, in my opinion, is fairly volatile. But in the current state of the game, I don't think she's worth going for, personally. But maybe that's different with characters like Valeria. I don't have enough experience there, so when she comes, just sort of look at your box and decide whether or not she's good for you, good for the other characters you have. Like, if your main setup is like New Year's Mari or Izana or Academy Resna, like if that's your main team comp, any of those 3 attackers, you don't need Rorona to create bursts for you. It's just completely unnecessary. Like, those characters don't need that utility. They would rather have more damage or something else in the team comp, so. Her value really depends on the rest of your box, basically. So yeah, but very interesting character. It's cool that we have that utility now. All right, and that marks the end of the Academy banners. Finally, on to the last one. I know this video is going on a bit long. And this is the current banner on JP, the Onsen Klaudia banner. And Klaudia is an S tier supporter. This banner is honestly very good. These 15,000 gems I have on JP are going into that banner on the last day if I don't get her from dailies. I really want her. And yeah, she's just very, very, very good as a debuff supporter. And the main thing she has over other debuff supporters like Firis is that she scales with traits. Her debuff scales with traits, so it's very strong. And it doesn't do damage. So you can actually stack it up. And there's certain teams where you can stack it up quite highly. Like on the New Year's Mari team, you can potentially stack this debuff up to like enemies taking 4 times damage. It's very, 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 very good. So Klaudia is quite a good unit. And depending on, you know, what sort of magic teams you have in your box, she fits into all of them as a very strong debuff supporter. And it's very likely that she's not really going to get outshone in that regard, and you may just end up spending gems on her when she comes if you have the extra gems. So that's absolutely what I'm doing. But yeah, very, very, very good character. And that's about it as far as this video goes. That's all the banners. Let me know if you have any questions. As far as the actual like character tiering, I will do a more in-depth one in the future with actual tier lists and stuff, and it will go over current characters as well, and where I personally think they fit in the current Japanese meta. And so look forward to that video. We also have a live stream from the devs in a couple of days. It's at like 5 in the morning American Pacific time, or American Mountain time, on like Wednesday or something on the 9th. So whatever day the 9th is, I don't remember. It's at 5 in the morning. I will be restreaming it on my Twitch channel so we can react to the new content. And if you want to watch that, yeah, just come hang out, and I'll see you all there. Anyways, thank you for watching this video. I hope it was helpful, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.